Okay, hi everyone, welcome. We are recording this webinar. Um, we would like to welcome you. I am Amber French Griette, the one and only, although I somehow managed to sign some of you up with my name, so I'm sorry for that. But thank you for being here. And okay, we're going to get started. I'm going to try to pin myself. Here we go. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so we are here to welcome two researchers and practitioners. So Dr. Alexander Koidel from, let's see, let me just open this real quick. Hold on. Get this started. Slideshow. Okay, here we go. And share my screen. We have Dr. Alexandra Koidel with us. We have, she's from the Kiev School of Economics. And Bilal, by the way, if your co-host or Alexandra, if you guys can let people in from the waiting room, I'm gonna have to share my screen now. So yeah. And we also have joining with us our the Colonel, retired Colonel Andrii Ordynovych. And we are here today to talk about civic and democratic resilience. Um, I'm going to start by saying a little bit about ONM and then also framing the conversation. But before that, I'd like to invite everyone to introduce themselves in the chat. We're very happy to have you here, and we'd love to know more about you. If you'd like to share, where you're based, what's your affiliation, anything you'd like to share. We encourage chatting during this webinar for more interaction. And I'll introduce ONM shortly. I'm going to hand it over to Bilal Attache, who is our partner on the Ukrainian Civil Society Week, which is a new thing. It's a thing now. And PADEM, the Paris Center for Democracy, and ONM, the Organization for Nonviolent Movements, made it a thing this year. It's our first edition, and the goal of this week is to model and to give examples and really create through our own actions ways for people, not just institutions, but humans to build bridges and connect and to not just learn about Ukraine, but also learn with Ukraine around the notions of civil society, democratic resilience, and national defense. So over to you, Bilal, if you'd like to introduce PADEM.
Yes, hi everyone. So my name is Bilal. I'm the founder and executive director of PADEM, Paris Center for Democracy. We are a think and do tank, and we try to understand how democracies can function better under extreme conditions when there is a war, conflict, disinformation, or a highly authoritarian regime, for example. We focus on these things. So we have two different areas. The first one is publication. We publish commentaries, case studies, opinion pieces, and then we organize events, and this one is one of them. Our signature event is Democracy Dinner, that we come together periodically, and each time there is one country, we come together around the table, we talk about hard topics in an intimate setup. And the last one, actually, we opened up this week, Ukrainian Civil Society Week, with the Ukrainian Kitchen Democracy Dinner. We ate borscht, vereniki, and we talk about democracy and civic resilience. Yeah, and if you wanna join the journey, please don't hesitate to visit our website and register also in our mailing list that I will put in the chat. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. And we're very happy to partner with PADEM. They're also young and new, and also they also think very big. So we're very happy to be in partnership with you. And so just a few words about ONM, and then a little bit of framing for this webinar. And then I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Colonel Andrii Ordynovych, who's with us. So ONM, our mission is to build comprehensive defense, the really the only way that it can be built authentically, which is from the ground up, from the bottom up, not as a policy, but as popular action. And so our mission is that civilian agency or collective agency, the ability to use our collective intelligence, to use our resources, our connections, and our ability to organize as humans as a core pillar of democratic resilience in Europe, learning many lessons from Ukraine. ONM's work, so we're on the level of France, Ukraine, Francophone Africa, and Europe more broadly. And the different pillars of our work, there are different strategies, are civilian defense and resilience, civic education and leadership, as well as research and training. And so go quickly through all of this so we have enough time. So we have our board of directors. Our board of directors is an expansion. We actually were founded 11 months ago. I'm co-founder with Ivan Marovich. And and we have a board of directors that brings together so peace building and nonviolent resistance research, as well as strategic communications out of Ukraine, as well as a member of the European Policy Institute based in Kiev. Our scientific advisory board is small and growing, and we have Alexandra Koidel, Dr. Koidel, who's speaking today as one of our scientific advisors. Philippe Daza is a researcher on nonviolent resistance in Ukraine, teaching with Sciences Po, and we have Bienvenu Matumo, who is with Université Paris 8. He's a social geographer. And we have a couple of others as well. And we also have someone with corporate responsibility since we are not only an institution-facing organization, but also we also engage with the private sector here in Paris. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. And who else are we? We have a long list of authors. I'll tell you a little bit more about some of our publications in a minute. And we also have some international consultants. And we are growing. Ukraine Spotlight, real quickly. So this is our keynote, or I guess our flagship publication, Across Fault Lines, a civic journal. And our first issue was called Ukrainian Freedom, Collective Agency in National Defense. We had numerous authors, including Colonel Ordynovych and Dr. Koidel, and their articles are also going to be featured in the extended book version, which I'm very excited to tell you about, which is going to come out with Columbia University Press in November. But other than that, in terms of our work with Ukraine, we're leading a veterans training co-creation. So we are, I like the metaphor of saying that we offer an artist's studio and some materials. And our Ukrainian veterans, through the Ternopil Pedagogical University and ActionAid Eastern Europe networks, are creating in this studio. And it's a training on unarmed civilian-based defense. There's a couple of people to bring into the waiting room, by the way. Bilal and Alexander Fund, someone can let them in. Thank you very much. We're also exploring a Twin NGOs initiative, similar to the Twin Cities concept, where there's symbolic and also concrete partnership between pairs, an Ukrainian NGO, local NGO, and a French local NGO. And we're also coming up this fall, we're going to be launching team buildings in leadership in crisis and team resilience, and that's with infrastructure companies in Paris. Our 10-year vision is civilian agency being integrated into, but not subordinate to Europe's defense and security architecture. And I think that's important because we have another analogy, another metaphor, which is if you're on a road trip, you don't want to go on a highway with one lane, right? You'd rather have two lanes because if there's traffic or an accident, it's more robust or you have more options if you have two lanes. And so a civilian agency is a second lane that's complementary to institutional efforts. And we work with an H2H methodology, human to human. And our major project is Pinpoints of Resilience. In terms of our 10-year vision, it's an umbrella project. It's called Les Fresques de la Résilience in French. It didn't translate better than that. And we're already working with Ukrainian veterans or veterans as one of the pinpoints. We're also working with workplace identities through the corporate actors, so workplace identities, and we're also looking to build out other contextualized trainings in unarmed civilian-based defense. So what is unarmed civilian-based defense? There's a couple people to bring into from the waiting room, guys. Bilal and Alexander, if you don't mind. I see a number of people. If you can let them
I
in.
can't do that.
Oh, okay. All
I
right.
don't have this right now.
Okay, let me just do it real quick if I can. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. Um, Here we go. Here we go. Okay. And any of our late joiners, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm Amber French Griette, and I made a mistake signing some people up with my own name. And so if your name is Amber French Griette and you are not me, please rename yourself or put yourself in the chat, the name, and please feel free to introduce yourselves. Briefly, what is unarmed civilian-based defense? What is civil resistance? Um, it is not pacifism. I'm going to start with telling you what it is not, because you need to do a little bit of deconstructing. It is not pacifism. It is not an ideology. It is not the same thing as civil defense. That's a separate concept. That is a well-established concept, which is led by institutions. It's around emergency preparedness. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about total defense per se either, even though unarmed civilian-based defense is part of total defense. But we are only focused on unarmed or non-military wielding of power. And it's also not martyrdom. So what is it? Um, well, it already exists. It is not aspirational. It is not a call to martyrdom. It already exists. It is a phenomenon, a social science or a human phenomenon where ordinary people choose to act instead of be subdued or instead of fleeing when faced with injustice or with war. And the actors are you and me, families, neighbors, businesses, students, veterans, etc. We are all the protagonists of societal defense, wielding unarmed power through many different mechanisms of power, including economic boycotts, protecting culture, the narrative battlefield. Um, all of this is around the democracy arsenal because we have more than one fighting capacity. And that's good news. We have more than one way to have strategic strength. So I'm going to pretty much stop there. Let's pivot to our first speaker, Colonel Andrii Ordynovych. And Andrii Ordynovych was, so I met Colonel Ordynovych through an old coworker, Olena Tregub, who is with NACO, the Independent Anti-Corruption Commission of Ukraine. She introduced me to Colonel Ordynovych now a couple of months ago now, and he is co-president of ONM. So he's co-chair of ONM's board. And Colonel Ordynovych retired, so correct me if I'm wrong, November 2023 from the Ukraine Armed Forces, the Air Force, and is working with the Ukrainian Freedom Foundation in the US now as well. So I'll leave it at that. And I'll go ahead and project your slides, and you can let me know when you want me to move forward on the slides, Andrii. So over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Amber. I don't know in what time zone I would like to greet everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is going to listen to this presentation. This presentation is somehow the historical and current connection with Ukrainian maturity of civil society. Let me use my speaking notes in order to give more exact meaning what I put in my presentation. The Ukrainian recent experience widely demonstrated that civilian defense is no longer a narrow emergency state service function. It is also a core structure element of national security and defense ecosystem, as well as societal resistance and resilience. It clearly demonstrates that any type of armed conflicts or war in 21st century are not gonna anymore won by only effective weapon system and modern doctrines of their application alone, without ordinary citizen and society well organized, highly motivated, united, and easy adjustable under sustained pressure. Next slide.
Okay.
If we will use aircraft analogy.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Here we go.
Okay. Aircraft analogy, our aircraft of freedom has two wings, left and right. One of them so-called Svoboda, and other call it Voля. It is a different meaning. First one, Svoboda, as a general sense of freedom, and Voля is a strength to live as a human beings with freedom of movement, freedom of speech, any kind of freedom what the normal people have in the universal human rights. And Ukrainian national emblem trident spell out the Ukrainian language voля, which are combining the deeper idea of inner freedom, independence, as well as self-determination. The famous Ukrainian poet Taras Shevchenko mentioned that you will fight, you will win. God is on your side. Truth is with you. Glory is with you. Also with you is holy will to be free. These words became a spiritual anthem and slogan of Ukrainians, as well as symbol for invincibility of Ukrainian people. Centuries, ordinary Ukrainians are trying to proactively defend their civil rights, like freedom, human dignity, helping to improve security condition beyond on a purely military ecosystem. Next slide. Current strengths of the civilian-based defense, or other words, unarmed resistance in Ukraine did not appear spontaneously. It has a very rooted historical tradition from the creation of collective decision-making bodies to local self-governance democratical practices. Several examples on slide you can see the old one and the current one since 21st century. It is Zaporozhye siege, had been functioning as one of the most partitionary political system in early modern Europe. Introduction Magdeburg's law in different city of Ukrainian in 14th and 18th century institutionalize local self-government, strengthening civil responsibility, embedded participatory governance in the urban level. Rural communities along a law practiced form of self-ruler through the villages assembly, elected elders, managing land use, taxation, dispute resolution. In modern time of 21st century, I picked up only a couple of them, like Ukrainian Youth Association, which was created in Ukraine in Kharkiv in 1925, after the Soviet domination was put it outside, struggling a lot of prosecution by the communist authority. In 1946, it was appear outside of Ukraine. Another one, Ukrainian American Veteran Association, which been organized in 1948 as a patriotic organization composed of honorably discharged veterans of the United States of America who are Ukrainian heritage or descent. Another one, the Ukrainian Sports Federation of the US and Canada, known as USCAC, founded in 1945. And Ukrainian World Congress was created in 1967 as international not-profit organization. Everyone, it is like, as a result, Ukraine's current strong civil society has become rooted in the long tradition of collective self-governance and civic participation. Across different historical periods, Ukrainian society has repeatedly developed mechanisms for collective decision-making, accountability, community-level organization in times of crisis, internal and external threat. Next slide. Russian attritional war of aggression against Ukraine mainly pursued through the robust strategy of often experts call it like 3D strategy. It is they are trying to discriminate Ukrainian political military leadership, destabilize of civil society, not to be so proactive, as well as demoralize of Ukrainian defense forces. It is a primary three strategic objectives what they would like to achieve it, driven by wish to reduce as much as possible level of Ukrainian people resilience, as well as resistance throughout massive cognitive and not cognitive action. The last, as example, the last Russian winter campaign, December 2025 and February 2026, has clearly exemplified such struggle, where the Ukrainian civil society has become a dominant center of gravity of their strategy. Instead of raising demands and pushing national government to some types of political, military, and territorial concession, the Ukrainian civil society has adjusted its daily lives for a new normal, without electricity in some places more than 48 hours, in addition to absence of hot water, wood deliveries. Open new chapter of transformation of the national electric grid system from centralized to decentralized one, revoke beginning of 20th century livelihood in torches and candles. Next slide. This kind of civilian-based defense has a different kind of features based on what is the first resilience, what is resistance. You see on this slide that core features of resilience are covering individual person which are decided to defend country, as well as using on the civil life or military life. It is a collective response involving military people in some forms of activity. It is a decentralized based on the government directives, a decentralized based on let's say out of full state control, based of political will and wishes of Ukrainian people. It is very much networked, as well as highly integrated, but not subordinated at all to Ukrainian military. And another form of resistance, you see each of these line of efforts are complementing each other, and they are creating so-called a total defense. Some of them are directed to the complement of action of Ukrainian armed forces. There are different forms. Here is some of the examples. Another trying to increase the cost of this aggression. Third one, it is like fighting disinformation, presenting, sharing the right information. I mean, from human beings, so what actually on the ground, but not what is speculated. More important also, it was business has been oriented to help, and numbers of ecosystem have been created not by military but a civil society. And right now we became the like UAV or different type of robotic on drones, international hub in Ukraine, and numbers of countries wanted to be engaged, as well as private company. Cultural thing, Ukrainians shifted, less use Russian language, less listen Russian music, less read Russian books, which was pushing Ukrainians for the centuries to do it. And we, using this, also internationally mobilized of Ukrainians to help their relatives, their friends and colleagues in Ukraine. And here ONM, it is one of the examples being created focusing how to help Ukraine. Next slide. Here, beyond of emergency response, activities of civil society are focused on Ukrainian recovery and future, strengths democratic institutions, supporting reconstruction, building lasting global partnership. Civil activists constantly continue to raise funds and source critical electrical equipment through the its Energize Ukraine campaign, supporting Ukrainian energy resilience, aiming ongoing attack of critical infrastructure. They lead international effort to hold Russia accountable for its crimes, committed crimes on Ukrainian soil, including deportation of Ukrainian children. They work with governmental people, the international organization, partners worldwide, and advance justice, strength, sanction, and ensure long-term security for Ukraine and democratic world. Here, I believe that numbers of nations has the same characteristic, individual one to each nation, but I would want to underline that it is a part of Ukrainian DNA, if I may say. It could be a controversy, it could be in favor of it, but everything are building a strong mood to defend country, and specifically from the civilian-based approach. Next slide. Approaching to the lessons learned in civil-based defense in face of Russian invasion, I touched two aspects, doctrinal and operational one. Doctrinal is actually what's supposed to be in each nation in face of any kind of threat or act of aggression or war. I believe that Ukrainians, government and society have not been in reactive mode, applying principle deterrence by denial, but to be in proactive one with application of principle deterrence by counter action and defense. It is applicable to any stage of military conflict development. In doctrinal, we have to have, and we actually something developed like national civil resilience and resistance strategy, which apply numbers of actions or work what should be done by governmental people and non-governmental in order to be in good defense. Law of national resistance was introduced in Ukraine on the latest stages and probably been developed and for the current couple years with some effectiveness of sabotage and other stuff on the temporary occupied territory as well as on our Russian soil as well. Strategic national defense plan with explicit roles of different task functions, civil society should be elaborated much in advance. Concept for civil military cooperation and so on. On operational level, it was done to some extent why our electrical grid system are still survive despite the fact some interruption. It is as well as was created centralized raid alert system which helping people to go to the shelters or to go in the more secure and safe area with the kids. It helping people a lot to adjust to the war environment. Municipal authority playing the key role of helping people, specifically internal displaced person in the western part of Ukraine, central parts of Ukraine. It is main entry door for anyone who are coming to the municipalities and ask some kind of support. And centralized and decentralized base defense system, centralized on the government and decentralized based on the non-governmental organization, activist frame. But what I would like to underline that in order to be better prepared, you have to understand that it is not a winning strategy to leave civilian-based defense to wartime to be improvised, to improvise everything. It should be very well coordinated. When I visited recently Taiwan and shared this experience, and I do understand after the meeting with National Security Council, they already got point that it's much better to be prepared right now for any threat or any pending issue or upcoming non-clear action from the possible enemies. They have to be prepared. It is already kind of accounted lesson from Ukraine. Next slide. On this slide, I wanted to show up the general professional competency, what actually civil-based defense as a system, each individual member in light of Ukrainian experience, have to have it. It is universal, I believe it, to numbers of occasion, but more important to understand that readiness too easy to wake up and go away or go to some area and help civilian. Ability provide different type of assistance, including in the medical field, to be trained in the tactical medicine, to join military and be in civilian helping on the street because situation could demand it at any time help for people. Also very important for NGOs and activists to preserve credibility and public trust with, let's say, different domain, ethnic and other kind of stuff, and capacity to operate beyond on national border. What actually our numbers of NGOs, actually numbers of our scientists, our representative from the educational institution are walking around trying to talk, trying to raise awareness about the Ukrainian situation. This professional ability have to be in constant development. It is not you develop it once and forever. It should be included from the kindergarten, I believe it, to be a right citizen, to understand what is good, what is bad. Go to the school, explain how it is important to be in active mood, trying to tell other, to feel shoulder other, and be accountable to your actions since your growing up. As well as in university, to explain more detail about the probably civil defense, what does mean, and how the civilian could place, be a backup for the military, and be a good player, but not completely subordinated to military structure. Thank you very much for your attention. Would be very pleased to respond to your question. Hopefully, I met exactly 20 minutes.
Thank you, Colonel Ordynovych. This is great. We actually had a lot of positive feedback in the chat while you were talking. And I think it's extremely strong coming from you as a colonel and as a Ukrainian colonel, and one who was active before, before 2023. And I'm very humbled by your message because it is my message, and it's different coming from you, you know. And I know there are many people who signed up for this webinar who work within institutions, who work within perhaps ministries. And, I think I think that there's a lot of ways that first steps towards preparing, it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that it's very important that you pointed out, Colonel Ordynovych, that this didn't happen overnight. It comes from a very deep, rich societal fabric and practice. And I think that's one thing that we overlook in a lot of resilience conversations today is we're so focused on the end state that we never look at the verb, right? And so, but there's no verb form of resilience. You can't resiliate. And so what's missing is resistance. And when I first began, applying my work on civil resistance to the situation of Europe. As I'm here, I'm a mom, I'm a boy mom. I live in France, is where my life is, and I'm one time zone away from a war zone. When I started to step up and take responsibility to use my knowledge on civil resistance, I realized that that there needs to be two sort of engagement strategies, and it's not just institutions that need to meet us halfway as populations. It's also civil society and ordinary people who need to meet them halfway. And so there's a lot of homework that we need to do. We need to work on social trust. We need to keep an open mind. And I have to say, I won't give many details, but just in my many interactions with institutional actors in France in the defense establishment, I'm very encouraged and impressed. They made space for us at the Paris Defense and Security Forum. And I think also on the side of civil society, a lot of us who work in peace and nonviolence, it's a time to meet others halfway and not come with ideology or ultimatums. This is real. war is real and we all need to be making steps. And so, yeah, so let's pivot to Alexandra, Dr. Alexandra Koidel. She co-founded, correct me if I'm wrong, co-founded the program on democratic resilience at the Kiev School of Economics. I think I might be off on the very specific details of that, and you can correct that. Dr. Koidel, and I met Dr. Koidel also through Elena Tregub from NACO. I'm very thankful to Elena for these amazing connections. Dr. Koidel I met her also at a resilience studies conference in Sweden last fall, where there were some 20 different types of resilience researchers: economic resilience, organizational resilience, academic resilience, democratic resilience. And it was very eye-opening. And I thought, gosh, there's so much in common with civil resistance studies. We just have different frames. One of them's a verb, one of them's an end state, or at least puts the emphasis on the end state versus the verb. Of course, resilience is a lot about action too. But I would like to ask you, Dr. Koidel, to go ahead and present. And as one last note, I think I have Otto Fiala. I think we have Otto Fiala on this webinar, and I wanted to say a quick hi. Actually, Otto Fiala, he is the lead author on the resistance operating concept, the ROC. And over a year ago, I had a conversation with Mr. Fiala about the resistance operating concept and the role or the mentions of real grassroots unarmed civilian-based defense in the ROC, and we had a very interesting conversation. And what was really funny was that, okay, sounds good. Hi, Otto. And so it was really funny is that after the conversation, I was thinking about it, and I thought, yeah, he said that without resilience, there's no resistance. But I thought, in my mind, it's that without resistance, there's no resilience. I thought the opposite. And so we sort of engaged in a debate around this, and it's kind of like a chicken or the egg debate almost. I don't know how constructive it is, but maybe that's a good segue over to you, Dr. Koidel, because I know that you have a lot to say about that. So over to you.
Well, I hope you're not raising the hopes too much that I will be able to solve this chicken and egg problem. Let me just a very important moment. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, thank you very much, Amber, and it is my big pleasure and honor to be here to present our research, especially having listened to Andrii. I have so many, great. Like I really see how our work complements each other. So I'm here representing, I'm here as a founding director of the Center for Democratic Resilience. We are established formally in 2025 at the Kiev School of Economics, but there has been more work going on before that. And in fact, I want to relate that how you said that the resilience, and also Andrii points to that, it doesn't happen overnight. And in fact, I come from a political science research, and I have defended my dissertation on democratic transformation at the local level in Ukraine. And making this step towards understanding the resilience, the societal resilience in Ukraine, was so easy and natural that I first didn't even realize that these are all very different fields of research. And I think that also points to how you have to start building the societal resilience way before. And spoiler, you don't have to prepare for war. This is about fabric, the way how we interact with each other as a society. So today, I will also refer to joint work with Oksana Hus from the University Duisburg Essen with my co-author. And what I will be presenting is data which was collected through cooperation since 2022 with the Council of Europe, Congress of Local and Regional Authorities, and also Association of Ukrainian Cities, also Association of Ukrainian Territorial Communities, and Swedish International Center for Local Democracy. So as you mentioned the definitions, so here I want to present and let you all go a bit through what Oksana and I call the cycle of societal resilience. And indeed, in our understanding, resilience, you can see it here, it's an outcome. So something happens, and then, I mean, a big crisis, a stress. In our understanding, the war of Russia against Ukraine is much bigger event. This is a systemic shock, but then there are a cascade of many different crises. There's internal displacement, there is energy shortages, there is economic problems, and so on. So we look at the resilience that happens or not at response of these war-related crises. So crisis hits, something happens at the step 2, and then what we see and on the surface is the resilience as an outcome. So very much you don't resiliate, you do something between the crisis and the resilience. And we call this coping mechanism. This is something that happens. These are strategies usually employed to manage the crisis and be resilient. Now I want to stop for a second on what do we mean by this resilience. It's observable outcome of coping with a crisis in such a way that a clearly defined core, that is a reference function, value, or institution considered worth protecting, remains intact, even though something around it must change. And here, remember how Andrii gave you the voля and svoboda. This is the core. This is what we would call the core of resilience that is protected in Ukraine, and in different ways. But then we can also look at it at different levels. For example, in our work, we looked at the resilience at the local level and the continuation of the functioning of the system of local self-government. And here I want to make one more reference. I was very pleased to see how Andrii mentioned the distributed systems and the role of municipalities. So today, the rest of my presentation will be actually at the local level because Ukraine is a decentralized state. Between 2014 and 2021, it created a system of громаdas, or local self-government authorities, that have gained more financial autonomy. They are politically accountable to their citizens. In 2020, there were local elections, and they also have certain freedoms, for example, to collect own taxes, and they have a lot of competences close to the people. For those of you in the local government, so subsidiarity principle has been introduced. So now, now we will move, the rest of my presentation moves towards coping. So I will unpack what is the role of the society in mechanisms that help Ukraine cope with war-related crises at the local level. So first of all, one mechanism is, we call it circulation of local knowledge. On these graphs, I will walk you a bit through it. So we ran a survey together with Association of Ukrainian Cities of local leaders of the local municipalities or hromadas, and asked them whether they involved anyone from the society in solving war-related crises, like helping people settle if they have been internally displaced. And we found that from our about 200 respondents, or 200 municipalities responded in 2022, a local government invited for consultations. You will see how in about 40% invited in 24 internally displaced people to consult on their needs. Entrepreneurs were much involved compared to 2021. We have similar data. And we also see great engagement of citizens. This is so-called volunteers. Then there is a continued dialogue on crisis issues. You will see here quite high numbers for that. And finally, what is even more interesting, why we say Ukraine is a democracy despite lack of elections, is that the stakeholders, they very much shape the decisions, quite often actually. And we see municipalities admitting it at quite high numbers. About a third of municipalities back then said that internally displaced people, entrepreneurs, NGOs, they all have given some sort of feedback which influenced the decisions. So, and this is all knowledge that helps solve the crisis. For example, the actors from outside local government often have connections, networks to businesses, to other organizations, which can help, for example, children to be evacuated in a better location. One such case was when from Chernihiv region, the children were evacuated on boats and buses into the safer areas of Ukraine, only because teachers have known each other from these locations. Now, we will move to another mechanism, or which unpacks the role of the society, that is resource mobilization. This is a graph that basically shows a percentage of our respondents who told us for their response to certain purpose of stakeholder engagement. And I will not walk you through all of it, but I want to say this. If you look here, attracting external resources has grown tremendously between 21-22 and remained the important goal of stakeholder engagement 24. In practice, that actually means that a lot of help Ukraine receives from drones to humanitarian aid, it's mobilized by the society outside of the government, but then with the local authorities often acting as coordinators of that. This is a small photography that I got from one of my interview partners. It is a case when in Novovolensk, in the very first days, a volunteer humanitarian aid coordination hub came to life absolutely spontaneously, but at the location of the local government. And what happened is active people who knew how to manage projects, how to do logistics and so on, they simply came to the mayor, said, we're here to help. And they had organized this, basically self-organized. This is a picture. But this was really a typical case of how coordination of resources came. Now, another thing is what is the society's role in the coping is because new stakeholders at the local level, especially, they are not so bounded by bureaucracy, and they also can help experiment and innovate. Here I posted a quote from one of the focus groups. It basically says that once internally displaced people came to Zhytomyr city, they did not all of them just waited for help. Some of them came to the local authority and proposed their help, and they designed a chatbot to survey other IDPs about their skills, about their needs. They also created a housing bank, and actually some of these people were hired later by the local authority because they were so skilled. Here I just want to say that many solutions are implemented and coordinated with non-governmental stakeholders from society. Here's perhaps the most exciting example is entrepreneurs. Because, for example, in Lviv, maybe Andrii can know a bit more about that, but I was inspired by a case when Lviv IT cluster developed software for training of their air defense when they still use javelins to hit the Russian attacks, and their work continues, of course, from that. And finally, with these three mechanisms, you can see that the society, I could give you many more examples of how the wisdom of non-governmental stakeholders, of just active citizens, also people who have been who have had experienced the war and have lost many things, but they still stood up and they support the crisis response. And in Ukraine, we see the value of this, and we see that citizens are their partners, not only people to protect, although that is, of course, remains a task of a government, but a partner of solutions. So I would say, since we are here in a conversation, I wanted to finish actually with a question, or a policy question, which comes from our findings with Oksana. We have the steps 4 and 5 that now we're talking about governance for societal resilience. So what do we do? What policies, acts will we do so that we will ready to protect our core, And then, of course, what kind of items, skills, and so on we need. So the question I want to leave us with is, how can society's capacity to cope through knowledge circulation, resource mobilization, innovation, and experimentation be nurtured and also meaningfully integrated into the governance for hybrid war preparedness? Thank you for your attention.
Hey, great. This is fantastic. We have lots of time for questions. And I wanted to say thank you to you, Dr. Koidel, for for engaging us on these topics in detail with your research. And I follow from afar all the work that you do. And I remember you telling me that you were working on democratic resilience, many years ago, but now it has taken on new dimensions. And I identify with you in that sense because as I mentioned, I've worked on civil resistance for now 13 years, and it's a different world out there now, and there's a very strong or large amount of responsibility that comes with having research and having expertise on this topic. It's no longer observation, it's political and it's not just academic. And so I wanted to thank you, for stepping up, taking responsibility for the kind of work that you do and making sure to use it towards the good of society today. So yeah, let's see. We did already have one question. And please feel free to go ahead and type other questions if you'd like into the chat. You can also raise your hand. So we had one initial question, which was lessons learned. I think that this does not surprise me that this question came up very quickly. Colonel Ordynovych, people are very hungry for lessons learned around the Ukrainian experience of civil resistance. And I know you shared some lessons learned, but might you have more to share, or even perhaps an anecdote that really illustrates one of the lessons learned? Yeah, so over to you for this first question. And I'm going to give you a prompt to unmute yourself. Hopefully that will work. There we go.
Okay, I am ready. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I believe there are numbers of lessons learned and based on purely a military approach. We have to have such of them in the tactical level, operational, as well as strategic level. It also could touch numbers of domain in which right now the war or military conflict on 21st century is going on. We can find it in Ukraine, numerous of such, but I would like to point out for a couple of them based on the horrific situation when we face on the outset of this full-scale invasion. Firstly, there is a simple, if you trust but verify. It is related to probably the role and place of government when they've been very much conscious not to lose economical development. They did not believe it that Russian putting a lot of thousands of troops around our eastern and southern as well as northeast border, and they 100% did not believe it that Russian could make this waging this war. And I believe it for the numbers of another government based on national interest. If somebody is going to build a strength and bigger than you expected, it is already a signal. But I believe that this kind of not right judgment, maybe too much trust, without verification towards the Russian government, initial stage of this war of aggression was very painful and horrific for us. Second lessons learned. You have to have, from the military perspective, for doesn't matter armed defense or unarmed defense. It is so-called ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, could be constantly, and using the listening different channels, and people and government been listening from our Western partners, but also did not very much accounted such kind of threat. War or conflict in 21st century is very much industrial. Second one, it is very much innovative, based on different system, not only system, but doctrines and leadership, but more important, very much adaptable. You have to be prepared to adapt. Doesn't matter, unarmed or armed defense. Constantly, you have to be adaptable to the new environments. Second lesson, it is education and training. I believe it after the fatigue of 2014 of this situation, we've been prepared much, much better than in 2014. But at the same time, I believe it for civilian defense base, no, civilian-based defense, sorry. We have to train civilian as well as military how to build not maybe like a total defense, but more sophisticated system, including command and control, including some exercises doing jointly. It is also a signal to anyone, including would be signal to Russia, if we would provide much earlier stages evocation of territorial defense forces, when they will be trained, coordinated, and ready for mission, because they've been only on the initial stage of formation. And Russian use actually this leverage and wanted to execute their mission in the very short period of time. It is also miscalculation or some kind of lack of readiness to do it. Mm-hmm. And last one but not least, to have a doctrinal, what I mentioned in on one of the slides of my presentation, doctrinal stuff. It means documents which are giving guidance to governmental people as well as to the NGOs, to civil society, that what we have it, what we need to, how we need to, when we need to, how we need to coordinate, who and what is going to do. It could be a national civil resistance strategy. It could be law of national resistance. Could be territorial defense forces or national guard formation. It could be strategic national defense plan. When explicitly we could explain everything was supposed to be in face of threat. And for sure, the last, it is a command and control. I believe it. Ukraine been using two modes, one for peacetime, another for the wartime. I believe it to be more efficient and effective. We have to have a literally unified, peaceful for peace and wartime command and control. When we, during the peacetime, we could train different scenario, and people on one or another position on different level of command and control would be already practiced and knowledgeable how to engage since the first second of aggression. We've been a little bit in improvise mode, and due to the, again, I would like to underline the maturity of Ukrainian society, been beyond of courage and disciplinary manner fighting of Ukrainian military, we've been able to tackle and pull out of Russia in 1.5 months out of the Kiev, Chernihiv, Sumy, and other region as an initial step of success. It could be numbers of other lessons. Again, if we will touch, for example, UAV or robotic or maritime robotic system, we can find another numbers of lessons learned related to industry, related to civil society, to business environment, and governmental management level. But let me stop it on this point. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So valuable. We have a lot of questions, actually. I might read out 3.
Is it okay if I also
Yeah.
respond to the lesson?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
To the lessons
Sure.
question. Something I would like to add to what has been said is the local self-government and subnational level. This is it's indispensable partner in designing all of these systems and so on. And the mistake that I see in some Western countries being made is that these there are two things. So in either the civic protection is simply considered that municipalities should do it on their own, and there is no guidance, and that's also not good. Or there is an expectation that there will be a vertical command and control system that in the case of in the serious case of war, so that the system will simply tell the local government what to do, and then they are viewed as implementers. But neither is a good idea, because at the local level, any war-related emergency will play out in a local context. So it means that you have to give enough also freedom and for the local government to know what to do, but also enough guidance. And actually, the partnership approach, when these plans would be developed together with the local authorities rather than with them in mind what they should do, this is something to really take into account, because I call our system of local self-government a national safety net. They very much pick up a lot what is needed for the society to function. And I feel like not enough of this understanding has trickled down to preparedness discussions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Let me read out 2 or 3 questions so that we can take them so that we can sort of maybe even combine some. So we have, does an issue of sharing private property for public use come up? For example, an abandoned school or grocery store in the US has trouble being reused by community people with resilient mentalities. That's one question from Eliza. I'm going to read 2 more questions. And the second one is from Otto Fiala for Colonel Ordynovych. Has Ukraine developed any measures of effectiveness for Ukrainian resistance in occupied territories? And another question, so this is not all the questions, but we're going to just field them 3 at a time. From Laurent, a human rights defender. He's writing from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he would like to ask what actions young African activists and Congolese activists in particular can take to support the Ukrainian population. Please reply in writing, as I have limited English. No problem. I can transcribe that. So thank you for these questions. It's amazing. Who would like to go first? And maybe perhaps try to combine some responses from these 3 questions. Would you like to go first, Andrii?
Please, first question relating the private property could be used for the community purposes. I never read anything that some Ukrainian businessmen or rich people been against to accommodate or helping Ukrainians like community. Specifically, when we are talking about the Rinat Akhmetov, the famous person, he was created since 2014 numbers of logistical centers based on his private property, when they've been used for the wide national perspective. Civil military cooperation units been allocated there some kind of good stuff like water, some food, some elementary for electrical grid in order to fix, and been asked by the local authority or private person to help them to fix problem. It was in 2014. In 2022, after full-scale invasion, the area which are under daily shelling, daily fight, it is no any objection. It doesn't matter what type of the property, private or governmental one. The people been used for shelters, for other kind of stuff, without any kind of complaints. The second question regarding the measure of effectiveness of Ukrainian resistance and occupied territories. I didn't read and didn't heard until now, but I believe it for the national resistance strategy and missions, what we are doing on daily basis, applying the special operation forces unit, small group, they do have some kind of assessment or measure how they've been effective in order to get positive results to the end, to help much widely planning offensive or counter-offensive or defensive action, including the involvement into the sabotage action. And probably some people around outside of Ukraine read it or listen it through the TV, and numbers of examples. I believe it the measurements of effectiveness regarding the execution mission and task. And the third question, it was related to, could you remind me? Regarding the Congolese people. What I would like to underline, I know exactly that Russian military trying to conscript them with offering a huge amount of money, but as a result to the end, no one receiving anything except death or different type of wounds on Ukrainian soil. And particularly it is area affected like Democratic Republic Congo. I would underline and one more time saying that it's much better to avoid to go to Russian military because it is a one way of journey, and numbers of nations like Bangladeshian Indians been requested their embassy in Ukraine to help them to go out from Ukrainian prison, but it is completely impossible when you are getting into Ukrainian prison based on the part of the Russian military. If you are voluntarily decided to escape it, I believe it would be some kind of excuse situation, but until war is going on, you would be in prison. It means they have to be very conscious. It is not easy to get money, specifically from Russia. Right now, based on calculation of average general staff, sometimes they're leaving that 1 week or 10 days for the training. After that, all of them are deployed in the area of very heavy kinetic action, and they are able to survive from 1 hour up to the 7 days. It means it is not a pleasant to anyone to join Russian military to fight against Ukraine because life is very short in this journey. Thank you.
I may add a few cents, if I may, regarding the question with private property. We really don't have any cases also at the local level that there was any denial. Moreover, where houses, for example, were abandoned because people left, the mayors went in person, and for example, the military had to be stationed. The mayors went in person and sometimes even removed the locks and informed the owners if they knew or if the owners were alive. And so the mayors here again make a very important role of facilitating usage of this property, even when it might look, not super legal. So it was never an issue. And on the question of resistance, I would say it's important. From what I see in the public sphere, I appreciate that Ukrainian authorities don't, they're very careful in not putting people in danger, because doing anything related to Ukraine, cooperating with Ukrainian authorities, having in your mobile phone a Ukrainian flag as a photo, this is very, very dangerous for people on the occupied territories. So if we are going to try to support any movement, a resistance movement, we should understand that people will be in grave danger. And with current means, what Andrii mentioned, all these remote strikes and so on, you have to really carefully choose who do you involve? Do you make a big movement, or maybe you actually don't? And of course, connecting several points, I can understand that knowing what is where, it probably helps to have someone who helps you identify these, but making a big resistance movement, it's you have to weigh the dangers for these people and so on. And finally, on a question regarding, so in Ukraine, we face a very big challenge of getting our message of what we are fighting for and what kind of country Russia is towards Ukraine in the global south in general and in Africa as well, because there have been a lot of support from Soviet Union to the African states against also colonization, and Russia is seen as a state which follows the Soviet Union. But actually, what it does to Ukraine and what it did to Ukraine, this is unknown. So I would say if what would be very helpful is to facilitate awareness raising of people in the Congo, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, about what Ukraine country like is, our values, having discussions, dialogues about our mutual values, because in the end, I'm surprised how much in common we see in experiences of oppression when we start talking to each other.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. We have more questions. This is exciting. How is civilian-based defense being used in the eastern parts of Ukraine occupied by the Russians? Is the Ukrainian government willing to prioritize this approach in those areas? That's one question from our friend Eli McCarthy. And Navaraj Adhikari says, would also like to ask, has Ukrainian civil society developed and piloted community security plans as part of its civic resilience programming? If so, what practical experience and lessons have emerged? Those are two questions if you want to take those. Whoever would like to go first.
Let me give kind of a lessons learned what we face in the eastern part of Ukraine. The local authority very much helpful to making the plans for example, civilian defense. They've been inviting the volunteers as well as some workers from the different enterprise, private and state, for the preparation work together with the armed forces of Ukraine. And since 2014, as particularly since 2016-17, we built so-called fortress belt around the Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, Druzhkivka, and one more city, which are very helpful for the civilian base defense, which Russians are trying already, as our president already mentioned, 15 times to change the plan or time of fully occupation of Donetsk regions, but being able to get for sure some or grab some kind of Ukrainian land, but still 20% of Donetsk Oblast or province is still under Ukrainian governmental control. But they've been very much successful on the beginning of 3 or 4 months. After that, each city, so what they've been trying to liberate, so-called, quotes, been completely destroyed. It means the cooperation between governmental on municipal level, from the supporting of central government, as well as the volunteers, NGOs, activists who helping to build the fortress belt, exactly one of the key elements of the civilian-based resistance and resilience. And for the could you repeat it second? I lost my, wanted to connect it and.
Yeah, that's fine. So going back up, there's a lot of questions. I've never been on a webinar with so many questions. If someone else, let's see. So here it is. Has Ukrainian civil society developed and piloted community security plans as part of its civic resilience programming? And if so, what practical experience and lessons have emerged?
I believe it on municipal level, the people, governmental people, they did have a plan how to defend the area of responsibility, what kind of support is going to be arranged by the armed forces of Ukraine, what kind of support, law enforcement. It was really on the plan, and they do have plan. It is not top secret, but the level is very high for secrecy. it is yes. And also based on National Resilience Plan, and I believe that the numbers of activists, numbers of people covered, uncovered, they do have their unique role in this plan in order to keep informational awareness of the local government, keep the line of communication to see what type of assistance the population needed in one or another area, where the threat and so on. It was done since 2014. And actually it's helping a lot to provide our special operation forces units to work outside of the line of contact. And they are very much active, and you can, even put it on Google, you will find numbers of missions and operations, what they conducted. I believe it. There were, and there are plans of coordinating such kind of efforts in the overall total defense, as well as some NGOs, I believe it, and activists, they do have all networking connection. As I mentioned, it's very widely connected, for example, through the Signal or WhatsApp. In Telegram, it's kindly risky right now, but the appropriate state services as well as the local activists are getting this information personally, particularly on focusing on their lives, not to allow the enemy to catch them, not to allow the enemy to prosecute them, torture them. So if they are coming there using the different leverage to get them from the prison. It is not easy, but numbers of examples since the 2022, 2014 was implemented by the governmental people as well as the activists cooperating with different level. I believe it also into some level of Russian society, own society of Ukrainian society on temporary occupied territories.
Anything to add, Alexandra?
I was thinking in the interest of time, but just one note that what is important is actually not the plan that they make, but the process of making the plan, because it will probably all go, or very many things will go not according to the plan, but the coordination, the trust, the contacts, the mutual knowledge and respect which get established when you make such plans, that is something that comes important when you have to implement it.
Great. And I think let's take maybe one more question. We'll have to have a little bit of time for a conclusion, but let's see here. All right. Wow, this is amazing. Okay. I think there was one that I did not read out yet. The crisis of war. No, okay, there's just some discussion. And thank you everyone for your participation in this conversation, because I see there's been some comments as well. Did I look over a question? I think that we're good. Yeah, I think that we covered them. We can handle one last question if anyone would like to have one last question, or other than that, we'll have like a maybe closing 1 minute per speaker, and then we can wrap up. Have a couple things to say at the end. Okay, yeah. Ending statement, Andrii. Ending statement, Colonel Ordynovych. If there's something that you'd like to what is the one thing that you would like for the listeners to take away from this conversation? The one thing. If there's only one thing that remains with them, what is it?
It's the most difficult question. What could I recommend? I only wanted to underline that you mentioned it already in your introductory. I mentioned it in my presentation that the current military conflict or war is going to be won only when we will have a synergy of civilian-based defense with the armed defense. It would be less casualties, less collateral damages, and better visible success of countries or nations who would set such effective, efficient system. Not one word, but one sentence.
Great.
Thank you.
And
What
I
about
would
you,
say,
Alexandra?
yeah, I would say, and for that, you need to know what's your core and have the networks.
Mm,
What do you defend? And have the right people, right instruments, right resources to know how to defend this core.
great. Okay, so let's see. I would like to thank everyone. I want to wrap up just with a few words to sort of yeah conclude on these different conversations, these different threads. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick as we wrap up. I just have three more slides. Okay, let's see here and share. Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite um, institutions, any sort of institutional actor. This might involve those who work within ministries, those who work within foundations, perhaps those who work within humanitarian organizations, and also universities. So I'm trying to just present this real quick. Here we go. I'd like to I would like to leave you with a couple of like next steps, if you will, and ideas for engagement from here on out. So I've been sort of in this emissary position between the defense establishment and like grassroots association, the civil society, in France now for about a year or a little bit more, before ONM. And I've done a lot of observation of the ways that like local small NGOs, including those who work on peace and nonviolence, the ways that they communicate, the ways that they act, their criticisms, and I've also been observing on the institutional side the different sort of challenges, because I think that our greatest challenge today as a society is trusting each other and meeting each other halfway. And I think it's not funny anymore. It never was funny, but it's even less funny now. And so I'd like to sort of offer some thoughts about engagement, whether you are working within governments and sort of the institutional side, and then I'll offer some as well for civil society. So the first is it is all of our responsibility to actively defend civic space. That means ensuring that the opportunities for independent journalism, for freedom of speech, for freedom of assembly, for freedom of association. The civic space is sort of like the litmus test for democracy. It's not just are elections democratic? Or is there no corruption? So it goes much deeper than just elections. It goes much deeper than the voting booth. So actively defend civic space. Build relationships with people within civil society and go to their events. This is something that I've been doing a lot. I've been inviting those from the defense establishment, the different business cards that I've been able to keep, and inviting them, to this webinar, inviting them to Ukrainian Civil Society Week events, experience together, like events or having coffee. This is what builds trust, and this is what builds relationships. Also, one big takeaway that I have in interacting with a lot of institutional actors is that sometimes our definition of civil society is it sides a little bit on the elite side, like academia, private sector. That's definitely civilian, but is it grassroots? Is it the non-elite? I think that expanding our definition of civil society and going deeper, maybe even nonviolent movements or these different, small NGOs. This is the non-elite grassroots, and I think it's very important to think of these groups as well. And then, yeah, I mean, President Trump gutted USAID. What can I say? I'm an American citizen, and I have seen the ravaging of civil society across the world that this act has had. That this, the impact. NGOs like ONM, NGOs like PADEM, NGOs all across the world are strangled. And at the same time, there's of course a big rearmament funding priorities, and that's understandable. But we're being strangled. We need resources. And there's many ways that we can build projects together. And actually, this screenshot is a mapping of unarmed civilian-based defense preparedness initiatives. There's actually 32 lines on this because we did this back in December, and I'm sure it's out of date. We tracked and mapped all the different unarmed civilian-based defense preparedness conferences, seminars, trainings. Civil society is already leading in Italy, in Germany, in France. We're already leading with by example and already trying to mobilize the little resources that we do have to engage in training, to engage in in building cross-sector spaces to pursue research. There's a lot that can be done, and that can be scaled. And so so resource what's already being done and help scale it. I think that it's a smart strategy to start with what we do have instead of what we don't have. Actually, the real definition of strategy is using resources that you do have towards a goal, not using resources that you don't have towards a goal. And creating space for local NGOs and defense platforms. You'd be surprised, the things that that people or that ordinary people, the ideas that they have. And this is already, I say all these things as if no institutions are doing any of these. That's not true. In France, I'm actually inspiring myself from a lot of the actions that French institutions have taken on this list. I'm sort of admirative. But also other governments, I think that these are just some concrete actions that I think can happen. Also amplifying civil society agency-focused messages and not paternalistic messages. And then for NGOs, because I'm also in this space. I work on nonviolent resistance. A lot of our partners are working in nonviolence and peace and conflict resolution and this sort of thing. We have work to do too. Guess what? We're not going to get off scotch-free. We need to also actively defend civic space. We need to also reach out and meet institutions halfway, build relationships with institutional actors, go to their events. There's a lot of free events that are at the École Militaire, the French Military Academy. We need to show up to them and introduce ourselves and talk to people. And meet people halfway. We also need to adapt our language. We need to adapt our messaging, because this concept of civilian resistance and of unarmed civilian-based defense is very intuitive. So you don't have to be a civilian to understand it. It's actually very strategic. So actually, most military actors do understand it very easily. And I think this is extremely important: is defend a world that does exist, not a world that you wish existed. This is sort of like hard lessons and real talk. And then finally, think outside the box for funding, right? Like we shouldn't just wait around for other people to solve our problem of funding. We need to get resourceful. We need to think about synergies. We need to think about revenues. We need to be resourceful. We're all about resourcefulness in NGOs, so we need to think outside the box. Engage with ONM. We're here to engage with you. I am always looking for speaking invitations. I can speak on democratic resilience, on civilian resistance, in many different aspects, and I've been doing a number of presentations already. Happy to be in touch with you about that. There's also the ability to commission work from us, to commission baseline assessments, reports. We're looking for funding. We're looking for support. We're expanding our board. We're expanding our scientific advisory board. We're looking for volunteers, and we're looking for partners. There's a lot of ways that we can keep in touch. So I want to say thank you to our speakers. I am very honored to have you on board with ONM, and thank you everyone for your amazing participation. I've never had so many questions at a webinar that I've managed. So thank you very much. I guess that we will leave it at this, and I wish you a good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye, Amber.
Bye.
Goodbye.